Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new League of Legends video. So it is that time once again to talk about the biggest changes coming to the next patch, but this one is going to be a little bit extra special because, as I'm sure some of you know, the next patch is going to be the one releasing all of the big mid-season updates. For instance, the new items, the item reworks, the new changes to the support items, and even the new reworks for the champions Zac, Sejuani, and Amumu. So if you guys end up enjoying this video, then let me know by simply hitting that like button, but there's quite a bit of information to go over, so let's not waste any more time and get right into the very first big change. So let's start things off by talking about the Maokai rework. Now, of the three big rework champions, Sejuani and of course Zac, Maokai honestly felt probably the worst because his W was just absolutely god awful. It was insanely slow and it was almost like a joke. But as far as I'm aware, that actually has been reverted to be the same speed as it currently is on the live servers, which again, if that's 100% true and it does ship out like that to the live servers, I actually feel like he wouldn't be too bad. I mean, all in all, his purpose is still pretty much the same. Now, the only thing I don't like is the fact that his saplings now are pretty damn hard to actually make use of properly, because now it has to be in the bush to actually be an actual effective sapling, or else it's pretty damn useless. So in other words, he's essentially forced to be played as a top lane or jungle, which is still pretty normal, but you can't really play mid lane AP Maokai anymore. It's just not gonna work. His ultimate is pretty much a bigger, more, I guess maybe stronger version of Nami's ultimate. Now, it's not honestly that bad. I feel like it's a lot better than people give it credit for. I mean, it is very slow, but it covers a huge range. So if you're fighting maybe Dragon Pit or Baron Pit or somewhere straight down a lane, you just throw that bad boy and they have to run. Now, the only bad thing about it is that it does hit one person, and then that specific route is simply gone, which kind of sucks. But other than that, it's honestly not too bad. And then moving along to the Sejuani rework. Now, of the three, I personally think this one is the best because not only does it actually feel different, but she actually feels really damn strong and has a lot of burst potential as well. Her new passive is actually insanely strong. Now, there's two parts of it, the first of which is pretty much Malzahar's current passive, just in a very slightly different form, but the other part, Icebreaker, is where things get really spicy because whenever Sejuani freezes a target, her first basic attack or spell against that target can deal up to 20% of their maximum HP. This thing has a lot of burst within it, and it's extremely useful to combine it overall with her passives and everything that she has in her kit, on top of also giving essentially an aura to all the melee champions around her that'll also help her stack up her 4-hit passive, similar to Braum, but just again, every single melee champion can help stack it no matter what they're doing or what they're actually attacking. And on top of this, Sejuani does not have to be the first person to begin the stacks. Her new W is actually pretty good as well, though it feels a little bit awkward to land the second part of it. Her ultimate is honestly, for the most part, pretty much the same thing, but all in all, I think she's actually quite damn good. Following this, we also have the Zac rework, to where I don't really feel like he's that much different. I mean, his Q is really the only thing that really feels different. I mean, his ultimate is kind of just bad and it feels extremely awkward to use. His Q is, I mean, it has potential, though the fact that you have to essentially auto attack the second person to smack them together is a little bit weird. All in all, I mean, he's still pretty much the same champion. I don't think he's that much more different. His ultimate, I think, will have a lot of potential once people are used to it, but it is going to be kind of extremely awkward to get around and properly use and utilize, and I mean, you're just going to have to see it for yourself when you try him out. Again, for the most part, I feel like Zac is still pretty much the exact same champion, just with his Q being completely different and his ultimate being just slightly different. Not much else to say about this. He's pretty mediocre, so whatever the current Zac is at the moment, chances are the new Zac will be pretty much the same. Following this, for the mid-season update, we also have a rework happening to the Rift Herald. Now, currently the Rift Herald isn't really all that contested, or at least not to the point where it's just, you know, as important as Riot wants it to be. So they're essentially remaking how the Rift Herald works completely. Now, killing it, to my understanding, is pretty much the same concept. You still want to attack it the same way, you still attack the eye behind when it opens, deal a bonus true damage, etc. But now the bonus that it offers when you have it is completely different. The TLDR is the person that essentially accepts the Rift Herald buff, if you want to call it, now gets an item. And they can either hold on to this item and essentially get an empowered recall for a couple of minutes or so, or they can actually use the item, spawn Rift Herald in the nearest lane, and this thing will just essentially be running down the lane, running to the towers, just absolutely demolishing them, and it has this really cool charge that does quite a bit of damage, and if you let this thing by a tower for a little bit too long, it'll actually kill it pretty damn fast. I think the best way to think of the new Rift Herald is imagine a Zrot portal or a ZZ Rot portal or whatever you want to call it. Now imagine if this thing got the biggest buff in its entire life. Essentially, it went from being normal mode to like being Super Saiyan 3 or something. It's pretty much the same thing. Zrot portal and the new Rift Herald is just the Rift Herald is infinitely times better and more effective at the same thing. The next thing I want to quickly mention that's also coming in this update is going to be not an actual big change to the game itself, but in terms of how it's displaying certain things, I think it's definitely worth talking about. So at the moment, whenever you're CC'd by something, or whenever someone burns a summoner spell, you know, it's kind of hard to track sometimes, right? It's kind of hard to see, oh, who actually did flash, or who actually used what. Well, Riot's going to be making this clarification much easier to understand and see, which is actually a really big thing because it'll make understanding what's happening in the game overall just easier for every single person, and it'll just be a very good thing. On top of this, they'll also have better clarification on items, so for instance like Locket of the Iron Solari, as to just how much damage it's absorbed or blocked, right? So this will give you a better idea as well as to maybe how efficiently you're using the item, how efficient the item itself is actually being, whether or not it's worth getting, or maybe it was a mistake to get, and it'll just give you a better idea of exactly what's happening, whether it's CC, whether it's just who used what, whether it's actually how useful your items are being, especially for support champions and things like that. Now the next thing we'll talk about is going to be extremely quick, but it's very important. Graves has finally gotten his cigar back. Now this is not a meme, this is not a drill, Graves literally has his cigar back. That's all that matters, that's really cool, that's really important, that's probably the biggest change in this entire patch as well. Screw everything else, Graves' cigar is finally back. Now let's quickly talk about all the changes happening to the items. I'll try to keep this as brief as I can. The first big thing to talk about is definitely the new item, Adaptive Helmet. Now this item is going to be costing you 2,800 gold. It'll be made out of a Null Magic Mantle, a Spectral Cowl, Rejuvenation Bead, and 1,000 gold. It'll give you a bunch of defensive stats like HP, MR, health regeneration, CDR, but the coolest thing is the unique passive. Taking magic damage from a spell or effect reduces all subsequent magic damage taken from that spell or effect by 15% for 4 seconds. So it's a mediocre price for the item, and it's really good just when it comes to absorbing a lot of poke. You know, do you have some Xerath or Ziggs constantly throwing their Q to just poke you down? Well, this item will definitely help you in that regard by quite a bit. Following this, we also have a new item called Gargoyle Stoneplate, 2,500 gold, so definitely cheaper. It'll build out of a Chain Vest, Negatron Cloak, and 980 gold, and this essentially will give you 40 MR, 40 armor, and 2 passives. The first of which is if 3 enemy champions are around you, you essentially double the resistances. But if those 3 champions are around you and you also activate it, you get increase of 100% bonus HP. But if there are no 3 champions around you, let's say there's only 1 or 2 and you activate it, well, you only get 40% increased damage, but regardless of the state, whether it's 40% or 100%, it'll still reduce your overall damage dealt by 60% for 4 seconds. So if you're a tank champion that's stacking a lot of HP and you want some resistances, then this item is not only just exceptionally good, but it'll make you quite the strong and solid initiator. I'm just thinking about this item on someone like Zac, someone that also scales off of HP and also scales off of size. I just can't even imagine how he will look like. Following this, we also have some bigger reworks happening to some current items, so for instance one of them being Abyssal Scepter, where it is now strictly a defensive MR type of item, giving you 300 health, 65 MR, 10% CDR, health regeneration, and nearby enemies take 10% more magic damage. So as you can see, it no longer actually gives you any AP whatsoever. But somewhat on the flip side, Banshee's Veil, also getting a rework now, actually gives you 70 AP, 45 magic resistance, 10% CDR, and still gives you the same spell shield. So you can almost think of it as these two items being essentially reversed in what they offer and their purpose. And on top of this, Guardian's Angel also getting a pretty decent rework where now it'll actually be a hybrid of a defensive offensive item, giving you 40 AD, only armor being 30, and still of course the unique passive of being revived, restoring 30% of your mana, 50% of your base HP after 4 seconds of a stasis. Now there's a bunch of smaller reworks happening as well to items, which I'll go over in just a little bit, but I quickly want to touch on something happening to the support items. So the 3 starting support items now have something called a quest line to them, which I'll go over each specifically. So Ancient Coin no longer gives 25% base mana regeneration, it now gives plus 2 gold per 10 seconds, and it has a new effect that's a unique passive called Favor. Enemy minions killed by your allies sometimes drop coins that give either 20 gold or 8% of your missing mana. But these support items now have the questline when, once finished, it'll essentially upgrade the item. The questline for Ancient Coin is to earn 650 gold using this item and upgrade it to a Nomad's Medallion. The reward, Favor, is upgraded to Emperor's Favor, and you gain an Elixir of Skill, which essentially lets you put an extra skill point into one of your abilities, so you max out by level 17. For the Relic Shield, the questline is essentially gaining a shield that regenerates out of combat, executing minions accelerates the regeneration, and of course you achieve this the same way, getting 650 gold. And the questline for Spell Thief's Edge is gonna be Tribute procs grant a short burst of movement speed. But killing a minion with this item no longer disables the passive of the item for 12 seconds, instead now it has a new effect where killing a minion stops you from triggering for 8 seconds per minion slain. Now there's a whole bunch of small changes happening to many other items, so for instance all the Last Whisper items have had their armor penetration reduced from 45 to 35%, but to compensate have had the total cost lowered by just a bit as well. Most of the items that give defensive stats, so maybe like a Suntire Cape or a Spirit Visage, have all had a very similar treatment, where now the resistance on the item itself has actually been increased, but the health given has been decreased. So for instance, Suntire Cape, the health has been reduced to 425 from 500, but the armor given has been increased from 50 to 60. And the idea behind this is to try and make these items not as strong as you finally get them, and make them much more specific to the resistances you're trying to get, rather than giving you a whole bunch of HP, making them effective against any type of damage dealt. So for instance, getting Suntire Cape to itemize against AD damage, well, I mean, it's gonna do its job, but the fact that it gave so much HP made it just as effective, almost negating magical damage as well, which was a little bit bad. Again, there's a whole bunch of other smaller changes like gold changes and things like that, but for the most part, that's kind of what you need to know. There are also two new skins coming out that I have to talk about. I mean, we have Darkstar Orianna and Darkstar Kha'Zix, absolutely wonderful skins. God damn, they're just absolutely sexy. I cannot wait to get at least one of them, probably maybe even both, because they look wonderful in game, and I have to give huge props to whoever designed them and made them. Beautiful skins. And the very final thing, and I'm not sure if this is coming for this patch or not, but there's definitely a new game mode. Darkstar Singularity. I made a video playing it as well, so I'm sure most of you have seen it already. It's a pretty cool game mode where essentially you're just playing a bunch of threshers trying to hook each other and put yourself inside this big black hole right in the center. It's a pretty fun mini game. I actually think it's probably one of the better game modes they have made overall. So once it comes to the live servers, hopefully this coming week on the rotation queue, you guys will try it out and maybe you'll enjoy it. But that is actually about it for this video. There you guys have it, a whole bunch of big changes coming in for the mid-season update. We got a bunch of reworks, huge changes to items, new items as well, and it's just a whole bunch of really cool stuff. So I hope you're all ready for the mid-season update, because I know I am. But either way, if you enjoyed this video, then definitely hit that like button to show your support. Make sure to share this with your friends so everyone else can see and understand exactly what to expect for this huge mid-season update. But I thank each and every one of you so much for watching, and I hope to see you for the next video as well. Peace.